I guess we can actually start. I think. All right. I would like to welcome every one of us to the annual general meeting of the African BioGenome Project. My name is ThankGod Ebenezer, and I am a bioinformatician at the European Bioinformatics Institute. I work within the Universal Protein Resource team, where I do more of writing computer programs to analyze proteins in the UniProt database. Today, basically, we'll be talking to us about the progress that has been made within the African BioGenome Project, which actually commenced officially this June. And, in June, when we had the first meeting, I did mention that the idea was for us to introduce the project to the African community, in June and July, and then restrict the conversation to just members, AfricaBP community members, and then to the partners, because this will ensure that we are targeted in the conversation particularly. And that one was mainly for the monthly meetings, which we've been having every month, the last Thursday of every month. Then I also did mention that we would then have maybe once or twice a year, a platform whereby we get to talk about these things, openly through the annual general meeting one, and also through the our participation in the Biodiversity Genomics conference hosted from the Sanga Institute. So we did that in early September or October, and so now we're kind of again having maybe in the next 90 minutes some discussion. So one of the things about this meeting is that we want it to be very interactive. I will be making a presentation, and the presentation is just to address two issues. One, to provide a background to scientists or non-scientists or anyone who attended the meeting previously, but would like to catch up with what has been done so far, one. And then two is that to also provide a background to people who have also just recently joined the AfricaBP or following the AfricaBP conversation after the inaugural meeting. So I'm just going to share my slide. So, and after the presentation, we'll just open the floor for discussion. So it's just going to be an interactive forum where we gather feedback. So I know people have joined since I posted the item on the agenda on the chat box. So I'm just going to post it again so people can catch up with this. So I'm going to share my slide just now. So I'm having difficulty scrolling up. All right, now I got it. Yeah. Okay. So the presentation will be very short, and then we can talk about the progress made. So can everyone see my screen, please?
Yes.
Okay.
God.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The screen is clear.
Yeah. So today I'll just provide a brief of a background to what we've been doing about the African BioGenome Project 1. So some of us might already be used to this slide because we basically do have a master slide, and then because of at least over the next few months when we're talking about a project, we'll talk about some of this idea that we'll put in the slide. But there are one or two slides and things that basically focuses on the progress that has been made so far over the past 6 months and more than 6 months. So as I mentioned previously, my name is ThankGod Ebenezer. I am at the European Bioinformatics Institute. And again, this is just a bit of the content on what this project is all about. So for some of us who are not so familiar about the project, which I do know that there are a huge number of persons, because the email subscribers have increased from about 250, 300 from the last time up to more than 500 as at November. So the African BioGenome Project basically aims to do three things. There are basically three goals. The first goal is to sequence all non-human genome species across the continent, basically, kind of coordinate everything non-human genome sequence, bringing together all the communities, in one place, and act as a forum, for the non-human space. Then initiates, develop, and support all new non-human genome sequencing initiatives, and at least focusing in doing this for more than 100,005 species across Africa. So we do know that there are so much more species than this, many of which has not been characterized. And one of the aim, again, is that this project would help to drive that conversation, in terms of molecular characterization and other aspects of identification. So we believe that this activity will help to deploy, will basically use the data generated rather, to contribute to regional biobanks, African agencies like the Africa Center for the African Disease Control Center, Pathogen Genomics Institute, the AU-IBA, Africa Union Africa Bureau for Animal Resources, and just about any scientific agency across the continent that would find this data very useful. Our role basically is to drive that conversation, initiate the project, generate the data, and allow scientists to begin to translate and apply the knowledge generated from this project. So, just again, a bit of a background to the goals, mainly for many people who basically just joined this conversation. So we know that human activities pose a significant threat to biodiversity. And there are basically 5 threats. The first is the land and sea use change. The second is pollution to the environment. The third is species overexploitation, mainly overfishing, which tend to reduce the global fish populations. The fourth is climate change. And the fifth is invasive species and diseases, as we've seen with COVID-19 and also other epidemics. And we also do know that there's a huge biodiversity loss happening around the world. Mainly, this diagram shows the comparison of the intact ecosystem versus the biodiversity loss globally. And of course, Africa is not left behind. Then one of the things we want to do in AfricaBP is to sequence all species across the continent. We do know, as many of us basically would agree with me, that Africa is rich in biodiversity rather. And one of the things we're trying to do is to sequence species, vertebrate species, from mammals all the way to amphibians, arthropod all the way to nematodes, sequence plant species, algae, protozoa, fungi, just about any eukaryotic species that are endemic to the continent of Africa. So over the past 6 months, we had the first kickoff meeting in June, on the 24th of June. And the kickoff meeting was to bring everyone together to kind of talk about the project. But before then, there has been some, preliminary discussion, active discussions that have actually been going on several months, more than 18 months before that time, which again, I'm going to talk about towards the end of the presentation. But over the past 6 months, we've been able to have the position paper of the AfricaBP is now under consideration, mainly because one of the things we want to do is that, yes, we've come together to talk about these things. The conception of the project is there. The idea is there. We've spoken to people, through workshops, through several other means, and we've put together all of these things in a proposal. But the first thing we want to do is to have a position paper that documents this initial discussion. And then afterwards, we will have a white paper that expands on this position paper. So, and the position paper is now under consideration. So, and after which we'll then progress to the white paper, which again, the white paper is there, there's a draft white paper, but we would come back to that once the position paper has been published. So I must say that things are a bit slow in that regard, so which is understandable, basically. Then one of the things, again, we've done so far has been to build awareness and momentum on biogenomics across the continent. So before now, I do know that there are very few people that, kind of thought about the idea that, several species can be sequenced, the idea of biodiversity genomics. Why I know that biodiversity is not new to the continent, but, the idea that we can sequence so many species, thousands and hundreds, and, sequence a lot across Africa is something that most people have found quite interesting. So I must say that before March, basically, we were just about 10 of us. So about 7, 10 that kind of were meeting together and, talking about these things, organizing meetings, with key stakeholders, trying to decide, should we do this? Is it worth doing? Is Africa ready for this? Would it be helpful? How does this overlap with other projects? So, but that was before March. And of course, as I speak to us now, there are over 70 active members across AfricaBP. When I mean active, these are members who actually attend meetings, deliver on tasks. So many of the progresses you've seen, I'll be talking about today, have actually been advanced by these members. These are, they kind of have their subcommittees, and many of which also have their full-time job, but they kind of also buy into this vision that we need to do this for the continent of Africa. So it is actually quite impressive to see that within, a few months that we have several scientists coming on board. Then for some of us who are not so familiar with the structure, so again, all of these are still evolving in AfricaBP. Even though we made some progress, we still think that we need to properly anchor this project onto maybe one of the agencies in Africa, the Africa Academy of Sciences, or just about any agency that have the multilateral power to actually to kind of coordinate countries to deliver on these goals. So we have the AfricaBP Steering Committee right here, and then we have the Advisory Board, which I'm going to talk about. Then we also have the partners and collaborators. And of course, we have the Science and Technology Committee and the Monitoring and Evaluation Committee. Of course, with the M&E Committee, this is where we have a Nagoya Protocol and just about ethics, legal, just about anything that has to do with monitoring and evaluation. Then the idea is that we want countries to take ownership of the projects, and we want the stakeholders to take ownership of the project, because AfricaBP is the intention basically is that it's a highly decentralized project, but then coordinated, and we're able to bring people together and help define goals, help support, and help deliver on some of these goals. So there are basically 5 regional nodes: North Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, Southern Africa, and East Africa. And all of this reflects the 5 economic regions of the continent of Africa. And of course, each node in each country, we aim to have nodes, at least we aim to have maximum of 4 nodes per country, who would then work together at the country level to be the AfricaBP nodes, feeding back to the AfricaBP on what is happening in their various countries. So I must say we are advancing very gradually in that regard, so which I understand very clearly, because it takes time for institutions and countries to kind of come on board. But I think so far, we are pleased with the progress that has been made in this aspect. So I will also now talk about the committees, particularly mainly the pilot committee, which have actually done a tremendous amount of work, many of which are actually early career scientists who have come together. They've bought into this idea, and I think that this is actually a good thing. And there are about 8 subcommittees: the Sample Collections and Processing Committee, which is chaired by Verena Ras at University of Cape Town, and they've done quite a huge amount of job. Sequencing Assembly, basically chaired by Abdullah in Czech Republic. He's actually from Egypt, but based in Czech Republic. We also have the Annotation Subcommittee, Data Analysis, IT and Informatics, Ethics, Communications, Partnership and Fundraising. So I'm going to talk about all of these subcommittees individually, what is being done. So because the project is still evolving, it is natural that some subcommittees will be more active than the other and must have been able to produce maybe large number of progress and things like that, while some subcommittees depend